The grand throne room of the Zirath Empire shined with silver light. Tall crystal walls reflected the blue glow of the twin suns, and golden banners of victory hung proudly above the marble floor. Queen Elara sat on her high throne, her long silver hair flowing like liquid light, her golden eyes sharp and cold. She was known across the galaxy as the Queen of Logic, a ruler who trusted in numbers, machines, and science. Before her, a group of scholars stood nervously. They carried old tablets filled with strange symbols. One of them, an old alien with trembling hands, spoke softly. "Your Majesty, we found ancient records. They speak of a species once called humans." The hall went silent for a moment. Then laughter filled the air. Elara leaned forward, her voice smooth and mocking. "Humans? Those violent myths from Deathworld legends? You waste my time with ghost stories," she said. The scholar bowed deeply. "But my queen, the data shows they were real once. Their world, Earth, was marked as uninhabitable. Yet their technology, their war records..." Elara waved her hand sharply, silencing him. "Enough. The galaxy is full of myths, winged gods, living stars, and now human warriors. The Council created those stories to scare children into obedience," she said with a grin. "No creature could survive the death world conditions they describe. It's a fantasy." Around her, the courtiers laughed to please their queen. The sound of mocking echoes filled the great hall. None dared to question her words. The scholars lowered their heads in silence. Outside the palace windows, the capital city of Virelia stretched across the horizon. Flying ships glided between towers that reached the clouds. In the distance, the great defense fleet shimmered like a steel wall around the planet. The queen looked out and smiled. "We are the highest of all life. Our science conquered the stars. What could a human ever do that we cannot?" she said proudly. Her chief commander, Lord Zarin, stepped forward and bowed, his armor gleaming black and silver. "My queen, there is one thing. A strange signal was detected near the border systems. It carries an unknown signature. Some say it matches the old human code patterns. Should we investigate?" Elara frowned slightly, then laughed. "Ah, and now the myths send us messages from the grave. Ignore it, Commander. We will not chase after fairy tales." "But my queen," Zarin hesitated. "The signal repeats the word Terra over and over, the old term for Earth." The queen's smile faded for a second, her golden eyes narrowing, but she quickly regained her calm. "Terra," she repeated. "How poetic. Perhaps it's a prank by scavengers or rebels. If it amuses them to play ghosts, let them. But send a scout drone just to satisfy curiosity." The commander bowed. "As you command," and left the hall. As the heavy doors closed behind him, Elara stood and walked toward her throne's great window. The endless void of stars stared back at her. She whispered to herself, "Humans, ancient monsters of war, who fought gods and storms. The galaxy loves its drama." She smiled again. "But legends die with time, and myths cannot walk into my throne room." Later that night, the queen attended a royal banquet. Laughter and music filled the halls. Holographic dancers shimmered in the air. She raised her glass of crystal blue wine and said, "To the power of reason and the end of superstition." The guests cheered loudly. But far across the stars, beyond the silent edge of Zirath space, something stirred. A broken ship drifted in the void, half its hull torn apart. Inside, a single figure breathed quietly beneath a cracked visor. Human eyes opened slowly, burning with faint light. He looked at the blinking message on his screen. A sin, Jill code pulsing over and over again, Terra reclaim. The stars outside reflected in his eyes. He whispered softly, "Still laughing at myths, are they?" Then he closed his helmet and pressed the ignition switch. The engines screamed back to life. The dead ship turned its nose toward the shining center of the Zirath Empire. Back on Virelia, the queen slept peacefully, dreaming of victories and power. The signal from the border systems flashed again in the command center. The officers ignored it as ordered, marking it unimportant, mythic interference. In the deep dark of space, the last human warship began its slow approach, carrying with it the silence of extinction and the memory of wrath. The Queen would soon learn that myths do not die. They wait, they remember, and one day, they return. The darkness of space stretched endless and cold. In that emptiness drifted a broken starship, its hull scarred with burns, its metal ribs torn open like the remains of some fallen beast. Each fragment of the vessel glowed faintly from heat and pain, and within it, a heartbeat echoed through the silence. The scanners of the Zirath patrol fleet picked up the faint distress beacon. Unregistered vessel detected. Unknown design. No known transponder, the officer reported, his voice shaky. The beacon was ancient, coded in a language long erased from galactic databases. Identify origin, Commander Vera ordered, standing tall before the holomap, her 4 eyes glowing red with tension. The computer struggled to decode, its voice glitching. Origin. Code. Terra. The screen flickered. Terran. Vessel. Everyone in the command bridge froze. The name felt heavy, like something whispered in forbidden tales. The young cadet turned pale. Terran? That's human, he whispered. Commander Vera frowned. Impossible. Humans are myths. But curiosity overpowered her fear. Send drones. I want visuals. The drones floated into the Dead Sea. Hips hangar, their lights cutting through the darkness. Twisted corridors lined with rust and frozen blood greeted them. The walls still carried strange marks, words scratched in an alien tongue. When the feed reached the central chamber, they saw it. A cryopod, cracked open, and inside it, movement. A shape sitting up slowly, covered in frost. Vera stepped closer to the screen, her voice trembling. It's alive. The figure in the pod lifted its head, his face shadowed under the broken helmet, eyes glowing faint blue under the frost. Identify yourself, Vera ordered through the drone. Her voice echoed through the ship's speakers. For a long moment, there was silence. Then a low, human voice replied, calm, deep, tired. Where am I? The crew stepped back from the console, the air thick with fear. No one had ever heard that tone before. That steady, human calm that carried weight beyond reason. Commander Vera tried to regain control. You are in Zirath space. State your species and purpose. The man looked at the camera, and though light years separated them, every soldier felt that gaze pierce their soul. Species, he repeated. Human, he said softly. Purpose. Reclaim. The feed cut off. Every screen on the bridge flickered black for a second. The ship's systems went silent and then restarted on their own. The captain shouted, He hacked our systems! Shut the feed! But the drones were already falling one by one, their signal cut, their lights fading. The commander clenched her jaw. Retrieve the wreck manually. I want him alive. If that's truly a human, the Queen will want to see this. The fleet deployed magnetic claws and tractor beams, dragging the ruined ship toward the nearest station orbiting the Queen's homeworld, Virelia. When the news reached the royal palace, Queen Alara listened in silence, her golden eyes narrowing. A living human, she said with a mocking smile. So the myths walk now, do they? Fine, bring him to me, I want to see what a ghost looks like. Her advisor, the pale scholar Marin, trembled. Your Majesty, this could be dangerous. The records say humans were unpredictable. Powerful, she interrupted him with a wave. Records say many things, Marin. Let us see which are true. Inside the holding bay of the Zirath station, the rescued human sat chained to a steel chair, his armor cracked, but his posture straight, his eyes calm. The medics scanned him but found something strange. His body showed massive cellular density, his muscles laced with unknown compounds. His blood glowed faintly red-gold under the scanners. One medic whispered, This physiology, it's impossible. The human turned his head slightly, voice low but clear. Impossible. That's what they always said before we proved them wrong. The scientists froze. No translator device should have worked, yet he understood every word. His voice carried the old accent from the lost age of Earth. Commander Vera entered the room standing tall. You will be transported to the Queen, she said coldly. The man didn't respond. He only looked past her, toward the stars outside the observation window. Still so many lights, he murmured. So much arrogance. What did you say? She demanded. He looked at her and said quietly, You'll see soon enough. Hours later, the human was escorted into a heavily armed transport ship bound for the royal palace. Guards surrounded him, rifles charged, yet none could shake the feeling that it wasn't the prisoner who was trapped. It was them. He sat silently, eyes closed, breathing slow and steady, like a soldier waiting for a signal that hadn't come yet. In her throne room, Queen Aelara prepared to meet the legend she once mocked. She smiled, confident and unbothered, unaware that with every second, deep beyond the stars, something ancient was answering the same signal that had awakened the human. A whisper spread across space, invisible to Zeroth sensors, a code older than their empire, older than their pride. It repeated again and again through the void. Terra reclaim, Terra reclaim. And far away, colossal shadows began to move between the stars. The myths had begun to wake. The heavy doors of the Zeroth throne room opened with a deep hiss. Guards in black armor stepped aside, and the human was led inside, his hands bound by glowing chains of plasma energy. Even the strongest criminals could not move under that force. Yet he walked calmly, his steps steady, his head unbowed. Queen Aelara sat upon her throne of crystal and gold. The hall shimmered with light, and the banners of her empire fluttered softly above. Her gaze was cold, curious, but filled with superiority. So, this is the creature that haunted our ancestors' dreams, she said softly, her voice echoing through the hall. You are no monster, only flesh and bone. How disappointing. The human said nothing. His eyes were sharp and calm, a deep gray like a storm about to begin. His silence filled the hall heavier than words could. One of the guards struck him lightly with a staff. The queen asked you a question, speak. Still he said nothing, only lifted his eyes slowly and looked straight at the queen. That single look made even her confident heart hesitate for a second. Aelara leaned forward. Tell me, what are you? She demanded. How did you survive? What is your name? Finally he spoke, his voice low, deep, like the rumble of thunder before rain. My name does not matter, he said. Names were taken from us long ago. The hall went silent again. The scholars and generals exchanged nervous glances. The queen raised an eyebrow. Then I will call you Ghost, she said mockingly. A name fitting for a myth that should not exist. He looked at her, expression calm. Call me what you wish, he said. But do not laugh at what you do not understand. The queen smiled. Understand? There is nothing to understand. You are a relic, a creature of dust, she said. Your kind burned itself out. We rule now. He tilted his head slightly, his calm voice cutting through her pride. You rule ashes, he said. A murmur spread through the hall. The guards tightened their grips on their weapons. One shouted, Silence, human! He ignored them, his eyes locked on Aelara. Do you know what happened the last time your kind mocked humanity? The queen laughed. The last time? Oh, you speak as if history still remembers you, she said, her tone sharp. Tell me, human, what do you think you are now? A warrior? A savior? You are one against 1,000 worlds. The man smiled faintly, and his words came like a whisper that somehow reached every corner of the hall. One, he said, is always enough. For the first time, Aelara felt something deep inside, an emotion she had not known in years. Unease. His tone carried something ancient, something that did not belong in this age of machines and empires. She forced herself to stay calm. Enough of this nonsense. Bring the translators and the genetic team. I want to study him. The guards moved forward, but as one of them grabbed his shoulder, the human turned his head slightly and the lights above flickered. The entire hall dimmed for a heartbeat, screens glitched, energy readings spiked, and the air grew heavy with static. The guards stumbled back. Energy surge detected, shouted one of the technicians. The queen stood from her throne, eyes wide. What is this? The human closed his eyes for a moment, whispering something too soft to hear. Then the lights returned, as if nothing had happened. But every sensor in the palace began flashing warning signals. External interference detected, said the AI system. Massive power signatures approaching the system. The Queen turned toward H. Air Command officers. Identify the source. Unknown, the officer replied, but it matches the same signal from the human's ship. Frequency, Terra Reclaim. Everyone in the room froze. Even the air felt heavy. The human opened his eyes, their faint blue glow now brighter. You should not have brought me here, he said quietly. You called the storm to your door. The Queen's voice shook slightly, but she masked it with pride. What storm? You are bluffing, she said. He tilted his head. Do you think you found me by accident? He looked toward the tall windows where the twin suns burned over the horizon. You woke something sleeping in the dark. Explain yourself, Aelara demanded. The human looked back at her, his voice calm but colder now. You wanted to see if legends walk, now you will see how they march. The commander's voice came through the palace comms, trembling. Your Majesty, multiple warp signatures inbound, massive ships, colossal in size, we've never seen such readings. The human lifted his head, and for the first time a faint smile appeared on his face, not cruel, not arrogant, only certain. They come, he whispered, as they always do when one of us wakes. Queen Aelara turned to him, her voice cracking with disbelief. Who comes? He looked at her and said softly, Humanity. The palace shook slightly. The sound of thunder rolled through the sky, though no storm was above. The stars outside began to fade as enormous shadows moved between them. The guards aimed their weapons, the generals shouted orders, but the human stood still, his gaze distant, like a man who had already seen this moment 1,000 times before. He whispered, You laughed at the myths, Queen, but the myths never laughed back. Outside, the first of the Titan-class warships entered orbit, its hull dark as night, its engines glowing like burning suns. The age of silence was over. The night sky over Virelia turned crimson, the stars flickered like dying candles, and the capital city trembled under invisible waves of pressure. Every sensor in the Empire screamed warnings. Every officer shouted orders that vanished under the sound of static. The signal had returned, louder, stronger, unstoppable. Terra Reclaim. It pulsed through the airwaves, through the comms, through every digital channel. The code spread like wildfire, infecting machines, disabling drones, making the strongest fleets blind. In the throne room, Queen Aelara stood before the giant holomap, her eyes wide as the galaxy itself shifted before her. A storm of red signatures appeared near the edge of known space, each one massive, each one marked with a human symbol long erased from history. Her generals panicked. Your Majesty, unknown armadas entering from the Rift Gate. We count hundreds, no thousands. Identify them, Aelara shouted. We can't. Their signals are encrypted, old codes, ancient Earth protocols, lost before our birth. The human stood silently in his chains, his eyes glowing faintly blue. The guards aimed their weapons at him again, but none dared shoot. His calm was more terrifying than the chaos outside. Aelara turned to him sharply. What is this? What are you doing? She demanded. He looked up, voice steady. It is not me, he said. It is us. The Queen frowned, her breath shaky. Us? There are no us. Your species is dead. The man smiled faintly. You thought death would stop us? We are not myths, we are memory, and memory never dies. Outside the palace, the people of Virelia looked to the sky. Clouds burned orange as atmospheric shields flickered. Flashes of light carved across the heavens. Massive human ships broke through the void. Machines built from forgotten wars, forged in silence and darkness. Each ship bore ancient markings, symbols of lions, eagles and stars, languages no alien tongue could speak, but every eye understood their meaning. Power, grief, vengeance. The Queen's main fleet launched immediately, a wall of silver ships rising from the cities, their engines blazing. Engage the intruders, the Admiral commanded. Protect the Queen at all costs. The sky erupted with light as energy bolts flew, but the moment Zirath weapons hit the human warships, the beams vanished like sparks against an ocean. The humans didn't fire back, not yet. They only advanced, slow, deliberate, like giants waking from a long sleep. In the control chamber, Elara's scientists tried to decode the invading signals. Their screens filled with human text they couldn't translate. One engineer whispered, "It's not an attack code. It's a message." The Queen stepped forward. "Play it." The speakers crackled, and then a human voice filled the air, ancient, heavy, full of emotion. "This is the voice of Terra," it said. "To those who erased our name, we are coming home." The hall fell silent. No one spoke. No one breathed. Elara felt her chest tighten, her mind racing. "How?" she whispered. "How could they survive?" The prisoner finally looked at her, his voice low, calm, and unshaken. "You buried us under your lies. You called us beasts, monsters, myths, but every myth is born from truth." He stepped closer, his chains glowing but bending under his strength. "You thought you destroyed us, but you only taught us how to endure." One of the generals shouted, "This is madness. They cannot be human. It's a trick." But the skies above disagreed, because as the Titan-class flagship entered orbit, its name burned across its hull in letters older than any Zirath record. TSS Resolution, Earth Defense Command. The Queen stumbled back, her golden eyes wide. She whispered, "Impossible. Earth Defense. That fleet was lost 10,000 years. Go." The human nodded. "Lost, yes, but never gone." He looked up, eyes bright with faint tears. "They came for me, not to conquer, but to remember." The ground shook as the flagship sent down a beam of golden light, not a weapon, but a transmission. The voice of a woman spoke through it, human and strong. "Signal received, survivor confirmed, extraction ready." Eolara's voice trembled. "Who are you?" she whispered toward the light. The voice replied, "We are the children of Earth, the ones you forgot." The Queen's guards raised their weapons, shouting, "Protect the Queen!" But the human moved faster than sight. The chains shattered like glass. His body glowed faintly with the same light as the beam. Elara stepped back. "Stop him!" she cried, but no one moved. Every guard froze as if some invisible force held them still, their hearts pounding, their instincts screaming that this was something beyond their reach. The human turned toward the Queen. "You called me ghost," he said softly. "But ghosts don't bleed. They remember." He looked up again as the golden beam widened, surrounding him. Elara shouted, "Wait! Why are you here? What do you want from us?" He paused, his voice gentle but filled with power. "To remind the stars that humanity was never your myth." And then he vanished into the light. The beam faded, the skies went silent for a heartbeat. Then the human fleet finally moved. Aligning in perfect formation, every scanner across the galaxy recorded the same code broadcasted again and again, echoing through space like thunder. Terra reclaim. Humanity returns. The Queen fell to her knees as the echo faded, her crown slipping from her hand. For the first time in her life, she felt the true meaning of fear. The myth had become real, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The world of Virelia shook as thunder rolled across the skies. But it was no storm of nature. It was the song of war. Above the clouds, the human fleet descended, their massive engines burning brighter than suns, their hulls carved with names long forgotten: Unity, Vengeance, Prometheus, Dawnbringer, each one a monument of fury and memory. Inside the throne room, alarms screamed, energy shields flickered, and the lights dimmed again and again. Queen Eolara stood tall, her voice sharp with authority, but fear trembled beneath her words. "Deploy the planetary barrier, full strength," she commanded. The officers ran to obey. Holograms flickered to life, showing the world wrapped in a blue dome of energy. "We are shielded, Your Majesty," one shouted, but the Queen could already see the reflection of the human ships moving closer in the window's glass. They were not attacking. Not yet. They were watching, waiting, judging. Suddenly, the air inside the throne room rippled. A burst of static echoed through the chamber, and every screen displayed a single phrase written in glowing English letters. "We remember." The Queen's breath caught in her throat. She whispered, "What do they remember?" The human prisoner was gone, taken by the beam of light, but his words still echoed in her mind. "You Rule, ashes. The palace shook again, chandeliers swayed, guards fell to their knees as gravity itself twisted for a moment. Outside, the first human strike hit. Not a weapon, but a shock wave, a test of power. The shield held, but cracks of energy spread through the barrier like veins of light. Elara's generals shouted, "They are testing us! They are reading our defense levels!" "Then stop them!" she screamed. Her admirals on the orbital fleet fired all weapons, plasma cannons, neutron beams, dark energy missiles. The sky turned into fire, but as each blast struck the human ships, the explosions simply dissolved, absorbed into invisible armor. "Impossible," one general shouted. "They're hulls! Our sensors can't even scan them!" The queen gripped the edge of her throne, her golden eyes wide with disbelief. "How can this be?" The scholar Marin stepped forward, trembling. "The record spoke of this, Your Majesty. Humanity's last fleet was built with material harvested from dying stars. Their ships were not made to conquer, but to survive the end of everything." The queen's voice grew soft. "They built them, knowing they might never return." Marin nodded slowly. "Yes, they built them for remembrance." A sudden voice broke through the noise, deep, human, clear, echoing across every speaker in the Empire. "This is Admiral Sarah Vale of the Earth Defense Command," the voice said. "We do not seek conquest. We seek the truth. Release what you took from our dead." The queen stared up, her throat tight. "Truth? What truth?" she whispered. The voice replied, "The archives of the human purge, the ones your ancestors hid, the crimes of the Galactic Council, the extermination they called mercy." Gasps spread through the hall. Some guards looked at each other in confusion, others in fear. Elara shouted back, "Lies! The Council preserved peace." But deep inside, something cracked in her. She remembered forbidden texts, deleted records, things she was taught never to question. The voice continued, "We came not for vengeance, but to open what was buried. Your empire stands on bones." Then silence. The broadcast ended. The queen staggered back to her throne, her mind spinning. She whispered, "If this is true, then everything we built—" Marin spoke softly. "Your Majesty, maybe the myths were warnings, not fairy tales." The ground trembled again, this time harder. Pieces of the ceiling fell, and the throne room's great doors burst open. A wave of golden light filled the hall. Elara raised her hand to shield her eyes, and through the glow, a shadow stepped forward. Tall, calm, unarmed, the human warrior returned. Gasps filled the room. The guards pointed their weapons, but none fired. Fear rooted them. In place, he walked across the cracked marble floor, smoke rising from his armor, his eyes calm and tired. "You tried to fight the past," he said quietly, "but you cannot kill memory." Elara's voice shook. "Why have you returned? Your fleet already won the skies. What more do you want from me?" He stopped a few steps from her, his expression unreadable. "To speak." "Speak?" she echoed, disbelief in her tone. He nodded slowly. "Not for war, but for truth. You called us monsters, so let me tell you what real monsters did." The queen's heart pounded, her pride faltered. "Tell me," she whispered. "Tell me what I was never allowed to know." The human turned toward the great holographic map of the galaxy. His hand brushed across it, and the display changed on its own, revealing images of ancient battles, burning worlds, and council fleets raining fire upon Earth. "We fought to live," he said, "and when we would not kneel, they called us beasts and burned our world." Tears filled Elara's eyes as she saw the images, humans standing against thousands, ships breaking apart in orbit, cities turned to light. "You survived," she whispered. He nodded. "We endured, we evolved, and we waited." The queen fell to her knees, her crown rolling across the floor. Her voice broke. We erased you." He looked down at her gently. "No," he said. "You erased yourselves when you chose lies over truth." Thunder rolled again as the fleet above repositioned, casting shadows across the palace. The light flickered as if the planet itself was trembling in guilt. The queen raised her head. "What happens now?" she asked softly. The human turned, walking toward the open balcony, his cape torn, his armor glowing faintly from the golden storm outside. Now, he said, you listen. And beyond the palace, the human fleet opened their hails, not to attack, but to broadcast the buried truth of the Galaxy. The sound of silence broke into history. The wind howled through the shattered palace windows. Outside, the city burned with lights of confusion and fear. The people of Varelia stared at the sky where the human fleet floated like gods from old stories, each ship silent, unmoving, yet their presence heavier than gravity itself. Inside the throne room, Queen Aelara knelt upon the cold floor, the shards of her crown scattered around her. The human warrior stood before the massive hologram now showing forgotten history, scenes the galaxy had buried under 10,000 years of lies. The voice of the human fleet echoed again, calm and filled with power. To all who listen, it said, these are the records you erased. This is the truth of humanity. Images filled the room, endless cities under blue skies, oceans glittering beneath silver towers, laughter, music, children running through fields, the home world, Earth, alive and beautiful. Then the vision changed. Darkness covered the skies. Alien fleets descended. Fire rained down. The oceans boiled. The world screamed. The queen gasped, covering her mouth. Tears welled in her golden eyes. This can't be, she whispered. The council told us Earth destroyed itself. The human looked at her, his voice steady. That is the lie that built your throne. The hologram continued, showing the Galactic Council chambers of old, filled with cold-faced species sitting around the table of judgment at the center. One human, standing alone, his armor cracked, his face covered in blood. He spoke to them. You call us monsters because we fight, he said. But we only fight because you never stop taking. Then they silenced him forever. The hall went dark, and fleets were sent to erase humanity's name from the stars. Aelara trembled, her hands shaking. We were told humanity was violent, unstable, dangerous to peace. The man nodded. Yes, he said softly. We were dangerous, to tyrants, to those who wanted eternal control. Humanity refused to kneel, and for that, they called us Deathworlders. The queen looked up slowly, her voice small. And you survived in the void, hidden all this time. He nodded once. Some escaped beyond the edge of mapped space. We found worlds no one wanted, broken planets, dying stars. And there, we rebuilt, not in hate, but in silence. We waited for the day the stars forgot their lies. The hologram shifted again, showing human ships in deep space, colossal engines carving light through the darkness, building great rings, cities in orbit of dead suns, their people rising again. Aelara watched, unable to speak, her heart heavy, her mind drowning in guilt. The man stepped closer to her, his presence calm but vast. You asked what we are, he said. We are what you tried to erase, the reminder that truth cannot be buried forever. The queen whispered, Then why return now? You could have stayed hidden, safe. He looked toward the shattered ceiling, where the stars burned behind the smoke. Because silence is not peace, he said, and forgetting is not forgiveness. Outside, the sky flared again as human warships projected their messages across the galaxy. Every planet, every empire, every ship received the same broadcast, the same truth, the voice of humanity carried through every system. We are not your nightmare, the message said. We are your mirror. Across worlds, billions watched, some in horror, some in awe, some in tears. The myth of the Deathworlders collapsed into truth. The name human became real again. In the throne room, Aelara fell silent for a long time, the firelight reflecting in her eyes. All my life, she said softly, I believed the council's words. I built my empire on their lies. The human's expression softened. Then rebuild it with truth, he said. Her voice trembled. And if the Galaxy cannot accept it? He looked at her, eyes bright like burning stars. Then the galaxy will learn what we did, how to survive the impossible. Thunder rolled again outside, but it was not the sound of destruction. It was the echo of awakening. Worlds across the stars began questioning. Ancient records reopened, forbidden archives unlocked, the truth spreading like dawn after a long night. Elara rose slowly, the weight of guilt heavy, but her spirit changed. "You came as an enemy," she said, "but you became our teacher." He smiled faintly. "Humanity never wanted to conquer," he said. "We wanted to be remembered as more than monsters." Elara looked into his eyes, and for the first time she saw not a myth, not a Deathworlder, but something deeper, a being who carried the pain of 10,000 years, yet still chose mercy. Outside, the people began chanting in confusion and awe, the word human spreading across streets, ships, and cities. The old symbol of Earth, a circle with a single blue line, appeared on every screen, glowing like a heartbeat returning after death. The Queen stepped toward the balcony, looking up at the fleet above. "And now?" she asked quietly. "What happens now?" The human looked to the horizon, where dawn touched the edges of the sky. "Now," he said softly, "the myths end, and the future begins." Elara turned to him, her golden eyes shimmering. "And the council?" He smiled sadly. "They will remember what fear feels like." Lightning flashed through the clouds as the human ships began to rise higher, their engines humming with restrained power. Elara watched them leave, her heart torn between regret and hope. She whispered, "Perhaps the galaxy needed you again." He paused at the door, looking back at her one last time. "No," he said gently. "The galaxy never needed us. It just needed the truth." And with that, he stepped into the light, disappearing into the storm above. The golden dawn rose slowly over Varelia, yet the light felt different, softer, heavier, as if even the sun car. By the weight of truth, the city was quiet for the first time in centuries. No engines roared, no parades sang, only silence filled the air. A silence born not from peace, but realization. Queen Elara stood alone on the broken balcony of her palace, the wind carrying the smoke of burning towers and the faint hum of the departing human fleet. Her silver robe fluttered in the wind, her crown gone, her pride shattered, but her eyes, once cold and bright with arrogance, now reflected something new, a quiet fire of understanding. Below her, the city that once celebrated her power now looked up in confusion and awe. Giant holograms in the sky still played fragments of the human broadcast, showing images of Earth, of humanity's rise, fall, and return. Children pointed at the sky, asking their parents who the humans were, but the adults had no answer, only shame. The great scholar Marin approached slowly, bowing low. "Your Majesty," he said softly, "the people await your word. They do not know what to believe." Elara turned to him, her voice calm but distant. "Then perhaps it is time they hear the truth." She walked back inside the ruined throne room, the same hall where she once laughed at human myths, the same place where pride blinded her eyes, now darkened by cracks, fallen stone, and the echoes of ghosts. The council of nobles stood waiting, their faces pale, their voices uncertain. "My queen," one said, "the council demands action. The people are panicking. Shall we declare war on the humans?" Elara looked at him, her voice sharp as glass. "War? Against them?" She said, "You cannot wage war against truth." Her words silenced the room. None dared speak. She stepped to the center of the hall, standing under the broken banner of her empire. Her voice echoed through the chamber. "Thousands of years ago, our ancestors built this empire on lies," she said. "We called this what we feared, and we buried truth beneath pride." She looked around at her trembling council. "We mocked the humans. We erased them from memory. Yet they returned, not for vengeance, but for truth." The nobles whispered among themselves, fear mixing with shame. Marin stepped forward. "Your Majesty, what will you do now?" Elara lifted her gaze toward the fractured sky, the last human warship gliding like a shadow across the sun. "I will speak," she said, "and I will tell them that the myth was real." Moments later, the palace broadcast towers flickered to life. Every screen across Varelia showed her face, tired but strong. Her voice echoed across every city. "My people," she began, "for ages we laughed at stories of Deathworlders. We believed ourselves the center of reason, and we mocked those who came before us. She paused, her voice trembling slightly. But we were wrong. The crowds below listened in silence. She continued, "The humans were not beasts. They were survivors, and we are the children of their fear. Our history is not clean. Our greatness was built upon their ashes." Gasps spread through the crowd. Some wept, some shouted in disbelief, others bowed their heads. Elara raised her hand, her tone growing steady. "The humans have shown us what we lost: honor, courage, and the will to stand for truth. I once called them legends, but now I call them teachers." The message reached far beyond her world, the transmission spreading across allied systems, across the vast network of the Council's domain. For the first time in living memory, the galaxy heard a ruler speak against her own throne. In distant stars, fleets paused, scholars trembled, the council chambers filled with panic, their old lies crumbling under the weight of truth. Back in the palace, the queen's eyes softened as she looked to the horizon. "Humanity," she whispered softly, "you were never gone. You were only waiting for us to grow wart. High of your memory." A voice came through the comm link, faint but human. "Transmission received, Queen Elara," it said. "Your message will be remembered." She smiled faintly, her tears glistening in the morning light. "Then maybe there's still hope for us," she whispered. Outside, the people of Varelia began to chant softly, not in their own language, but in the words they had learned from the broadcast. "Terra reclaim," they said, not as a threat, but as a prayer. The queen looked toward the heavens where the last human ship disappeared beyond the clouds. The sunlight broke through, bathing the palace in gold. She whispered her final words, carried by the wind. "Forgive us," she said, "for laughing at the legends." And somewhere far beyond the stars, on the bridge of a human flagship, the warrior stood before the vast galaxy. Hearing those words through his comm link, he closed his eyes. And for the first time in millennia, he smiled, not with victory but with peace. The fleet turned toward the dark rim of space, their engines lighting up like stars being reborn. And as they vanished into the unknown, the message of humanity remained behind, carved into every mind, written across every world. We were myths once, now we are memory, and memory never dies.